I will hope, like, of course, here in the future, working with producers here to actually find out more practical and feasible, ways to actually provide the pigs with some nice, species relevant enrichment, but at the same time, not really creating too much of the economic burden for the producers.
So welcome everybody to today's episode of the Swine at Canada podcast. I am Dan Columbus and I will be your host for today's episode. And with me today I have Dr. Jen Chou, who is the newly appointed research scientist in ethology at the Prairie Swine Center. So welcome to the show, Jen.
Thanks, Dan. And then hi everybody. Thanks, Dan, for the invitation to be on the podcast. And yes, my name is Jen Chou, but I ask people to call me either Jen or Jen Yuan. I respond to both, so it's fine. Thanks.
That's great. When they see you at the conferences and everything coming up, then they know what to call you. Just because you are new, obviously, and I think this is a good introduction to the Canadian sector and all our listeners and who might not be aware of who you are or what you've done. I think I'll just ask you to give us a little bit of your background and your journey so far.
Okay, cool. So I want to first say that, I'm really excited to actually take on this position. So following Jennifer Brown, who is also another Jen. So very excited to kind of continue her really nice work on ethology and welfare in Canada, in Saskatoon, and also, of course, Harold before her. So actually, I kind of came from kind of multidisciplinary background. So I started off as kind of I took a master's of arts when I was in Taiwan. So I'm originally from Taiwan. So in Taiwan I did a master of arts in science, technology, and society. So basically we kind of study scientists, what scientists do, why the science as we know it now has developed as it has. And then I kind of during that time I started to work with some dogs on campus. So in Taiwan, we actually have some issue with stray dogs, and then some kind of wander into the campus, and the students start taking care of them, and they start to be a very interesting community. So I kind of started working with them, caring for them, and it got me kind of interested in working with animals. And then I also through this time I adopted my first dog, and then that once you start your life, share your life with an animal, your life changed. So that's how I kind of got into wanting to work with animals more. So then later I actually moved to Edinburgh. I did my master's, the second master in applied animal behavior and animal welfare science, and then kind of just couldn't stop, and then continue with my PhD, also with the University of Edinburgh. But then I actually did most of my experiments in Ireland. For my PhD, I looked at I was really focusing on trying to find out strategies to manage tail biting issue. I think that's a big issue for all the pig producers, really, like in Europe, of course, because they are trying to phase out the practice of tail docking, so that will be a bigger problem. So I'm trying to find ways to actually help the producers to actually transition towards not docking pig's tail, but then still we can still manage tail biting on fully static floors. So that's I spent like 4 years working on that subject in Ireland. And then kind of later, once I graduated, I'm quite adventurous. I kind of took on any job I can, see. So I actually worked for an NGO for a while as a global animal welfare advisor. Then I moved to the States and did a postdoc, and then moved back to Europe, did another postdoc, and then now I'm here. So yeah, that's how I got here.
Yeah, a lot of varied experience and kind of moving all over the planet. So
yeah.
We're very happy to have you here at Prairie Swine, and I think see you keep on the legacy of some very high quality welfare research that the Prairie Swine Center is known for. So before we get into the stuff that you'll be working on or hope to work on in this position, I think we can go back and talk a little bit more about what you did in your past, either PhD or postdoc, and maybe some key projects that you worked on and some of your findings.
Sure. I think so. I just kind of briefly mentioned that. So my PhD was mainly really focused on tail biting, and we tried dietary strategies. So I would love to talk to you more about that then in the future. So we tried high fiber diet to see that whether by kind of giving the pigs a sense of higher satiety, whether that kind of reduce their activity level and then therefore reduce the tail biting behavior. But actually, I think at that time we didn't offer them too much enrichment, so kind of the environment in general is still kind of barren. So I tried the dietary strategy. Uh, with kind of one type of enrichment with pigs without docking. So in that study, we kind of have a lot of tail biting outbreaks, and it was quite bad. So later we tried more kind of a multiple enrichment strategy, and then the situation, I'm happy to say that it actually improved quite a lot. So I'm quite, so that's why I'm always quite optimistic, and I kind of believe in the value of environmental enrichment. I think that the pigs, they are inquisitive, they are explorative, so they really like to explore things in their environment. So I'm kind of a enrichment enthusiast, if you can call me that. But of course, I know that that's always additional costs, and then I will hope, like, of course, here in the future, working with producers here to actually find out more practical and feasible ways to actually provide the pigs with some nice species relevant enrichment, but at the same time not really creating too much of the economic burden for the producers, but also like let them see the benefits of using enrichment. So that's kind of my one of my main area of research. Another one is, of course, housing issue for sows. So when I was in the United States, I worked as a postdoc at the University of Pennsylvania. So I worked under Professor Thomas Parsons. In Pennsylvania, like most of the farmers, the pig farmers, they already transitioned towards group housing. But I think many of the audience should know that there is a Proposition 12 in California. So actually, the producers need to also comply with that, and then they need to kind of switch to full group housing. That's including the time post weaning. So that was the kind of the key issue I was working on as a postdoc in Pennsylvania. So basically, we try to figure out what is impacting the sow and then productivity when we put the cells immediately into group housing after they are weaned. So of course, this is that's surprisingly actually not many people actually investigated this part, because usually we put them into crates for only 7 days for the artificial insemination, and then we don't really think that there's such an impact for putting them into crates. But then actually some strategies are needed to actually managing the cells better in this very sensitive time post weaning. So yeah, I'm still analyzing some of the data, but then yeah, that's another interesting project I worked on.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about Proposition 12 because obviously that's been a big point of discussion, and so obviously affecting the American producers, but Canadian producers as well. So maybe I'll just ask, and I don't know, this might put you on the spot a little bit, but what are your thoughts of Proposition 12, and maybe what needs to be done to make sure that that gets implemented well?
I think my project when I was in the States really actually was kind of stimulated by the fact that we were having Proposition 12, and at that time it was kind of soon to be put in practice. But of course now we know that there are some delay. But I think Proposition 12 from the like a legislative point of view, I think that the Californian people, they have the right to decide what types of pork they want to consume. But of course, I think the important thing for us as researchers is really to figure out a way to help the producers to know how do I comply with that. And then at the same time, because during my investigation, we started to realize that really this is a very sensitive time for the sows, because they just came out of lactation. There are some of them are very weak, and then we know that sows, they have their hierarchy. So of course, like, I think they do have their needs to be with their specifics. So we would like to give them proper social interaction, but then at the same time we have to think about what types of housing you are actually giving them. So, for example, if we put them into small group, with limited space and then like a barren environment, they will fight, and then they will fight pretty hard. And then for some of the sows, it could mean that there's a very high risk that they will be injured, or they cannot get the ration they need to actually recover from lactation. But then I think what we found out during the study was really that just by dictating a space allowance itself is really not you don't really see the kind of the complexity behind behind the whole housing issue, and then also the sensitivity of the things that happens during this time, because sometimes the cell, they need some space for themselves. And then when you only designate a space allowance, you didn't even also consider the fact that they may need some good social interaction. Like, let's say you give them a pen that they can be there, but what we found was that just by giving them the space, it may not be sufficient as well. So I mean, from the legislative point of view, they think that this will be good for welfare in general. But then what we need to do is really figure out what is a good welfare for the cells during this time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, obviously lots of stuff to look into and make sure that it's done properly and is actually benefiting welfare. I think maybe that's a good segue into then the stuff that you'll be working on at Prairie Swine Center. So maybe introduce briefly, maybe some current projects that are going on, and then we can get into your plans.
Sure. So because I just started like more than a month ago, yeah. So I'm still kind of navigating my way here, but then already we are planning for two studies that will take place, one this year and then one hopefully next year. So that these two are sponsored by the Agriculture Development Fund from the Saskatchewan agriculture department. So, but anyway, so the first one that we're really trying to look at the using the data from commercial farms. So the electronic cell, which is using electronic cell feeder. So this one we will be working quite closely with a producer, and because they have a cell housing groups using electronic cell feeder, but at the same time they also still have some cells in crates. So we're going to just try to compare the data we can get on farms to see that whether in terms of productivity, in terms of cells health, lameness, and mortality issues, do they differ? And if they differ, what was happening, and then what is the risk factor actually causing the differences? I think this project is really kind of initiated because we really heard the producers are saying that some of the producers are having some difficulty really trying to transition toward group housing, and then whichever system they choose, maybe they are encountering some obstacles that are actually preventing them from reaching the same type of productivity before. So we're really trying to conduct this study to actually understand further by using the data the producers actually will share with us. So this study will be completed by a master's student. So they will start later this year. So hopefully we will have more results to show everyone next year. And so the other one, I'll just briefly mention that. So we also got a project on loose lactation funded. So I think loose lactation is of course a brand new topic for the Canadian producers, I can imagine. But I think it is just interesting to actually we try to kind of move a little bit more advanced, of what we are comfortable with. So we want to actually investigate. So currently there are more and more commercially available loose lactation systems that kind of allow the cells more freedom during farrowing and during lactation. And then we want to see that what's the benefits this housing system can bring, and then whether this may be kind of the future, the next step for our for Canadian production. But yeah, that's kind of exciting because I think most of the studies before in Canada they usually use a very experimental system. Like they design their own system, but now we have some commercial manufacturer that can they come from Europe, so the producer can actually purchase these systems. But we just want to make sure that these systems are good and
Hmm.
for the producer. So this is why we're excited to have this project at PSC.
It'll be interesting to see the results. I've heard about these and the potential benefits and everything, so it'd be very good if you can show that.
Mhm.
For the first study you mentioned, and you're going to be working with producers, are you looking for partners to come on that project, or have you identified the people?
Yes, we do already identified a big producer. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can mention their name, so I'll just keep quiet for now. But yeah, but we have a partner, a collaborator in this project already who, it's a big integrated, not integrated, but it's a very big producers in the province,
Yep.
who is really, we're really grateful that they're happy to work with us on this. So we're gonna just use their data. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say if you could put the call out if you're looking for partners potentially and people listening if they want to participate in the research. So
Yeah, of course, like, future collaborations are always welcome. So this is just, one farm, but then we'll be happy, yeah, to actually have more data from different farms. That would be a kind of a cross-sectional study, would be
yep.
also fantastic.
Okay. Sounds good. I think that leads nicely into then, you're new. You're obviously eager to set up your own program. So I'm interested to know what you're planning on doing, what kind of areas you'd like to look at, what maybe issues that you see coming up for pork production.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. So I think, of course, as I said, like enrichment is one of the things I really care about. So I think I would definitely want to kind of start something to find really locally, feasible enrichment strategies that will be good to apply on Canadian pig farms. I think that's kind of it's a big idea. I know that usually you have to kind of test out a little bit of different things, and also I think Dr. Yolande Seddon has been working on this topic also for a while now. So I think we're just going to explore what options we have and then what options are kind of viable economically and also will be meaningful for the pigs. I think that's the most important thing because, the time I work with enrichment, I think usually people think that some people think that you're just throwing something in the pen and then it naturally become enrichment, but actually it's not so easy. If you want kind of spend your money on the right place, then you actually really need to figure out what the pigs needs, what enrichment can actually kind of change their behavior or improve their growth and all that. I think good enrichment can do that, but then it's not like we can just throw in anything and then hopefully that it will work. So that's definitely one of the directions I would like to take. And the other one, I think I'm actually really interested in hearing what the producer thinks that that will interest them in terms of welfare improvement or overall like other areas. So I'm really hoping that I will have the opportunity. I think in the spring producer meeting that we will be hosting soon, toward the end of this month, I will be happy to really listen to what the producers think about what types of study they would like to see, and I will be happy to investigate further. And then the other thing is I'm also kind of I'm very interested in the idea of one welfare. So basically, I do think that improving animal welfare is not just good for the animals, and also should be good for the humans that work with the animals, and then as well. So I think that's also another thing that I would like to explore further. That whether improving animal welfare can actually go beyond the animal and also improve the human welfare as well.
Yeah, we've heard of inklings of other people trying to start to look at that to be like, how does the worker welfare improve depending on, or what are their perceptions even about working with pigs and how that affects their welfare. So hopefully you can find something that allows you to do that one. Um, with the enrichment, I want to ask, just because this has obviously been an area that a lot of people have worked on, and different types of enrichment and what to do, and everything, right? And it seems like, from an outsider, it almost looks like that it's been beaten to death. So what areas do you think, like what novelty are you going to bring into that type of research, or ideas that you might have, without maybe giving away too much for the for other people?
Sure. I think, yes, definitely. I think enrichment studies like in pigs and in almost all farm animal species has been going on for like in the past decades, like tons of literature has come out on this subject. I think the problem is like we because I wrote a chapter on this. I think one of the issue is that really, like I said earlier, that we need to have kind of a clear definition when we talk about enrichment. So, for example, when we say we're going to do an enrichment study, we have to first make sure that the thing you're testing is actually can be called a proper enrichment. I think that's one of the things sometimes are like in the literature you can see that like maybe people may be storing a ball in the pen and they just call it an enrichment study, which we think that needs to be re-examined. So I think it's really important that when you say you're going to do an enrichment study, you need to really define, what is this enrichment, what is enriching about it. So that's really important. And another thing is really the commercial practicality. So we have loads of studies that have been done on experimental farm. I mean, myself included, like when I did my one of my biggest study in Ireland, of course, I still did it on the research farm we had in Ireland. Of course, our research farm is similar to the PSC farm, that is very similar to the commercial farms, but then still, it's different in a sense. So I think to be able to conduct enrichment studies on commercial farms will be a very important thing. And then actually currently there are not many studies that actually take their enrichment and then actually try to implement it on farms and see how practical it is. And also, like, enrichment definitely need to be localized. So I would think that in Canada or even in Saskatchewan, we will need to find the enrichment materials that are locally available, easily sourced, cheaply available, so that it can be used by the producers in a sustainable way. So I think there's still a lot of these issues that, although unfortunately, I think that's just one of the things that we have tons of enrichment studies, but then still, even thinking about, like when you test an enrichment, do you just test how often the animals interact with an item, or do you test actually what benefits it brings? So most of the enrichment study, they usually just stop at, testing how often, the pigs interact with the enrichment. But then when you come to, hey, so what are the benefits? What are the effects the enrichment brings? It's usually less, like some studies don't touch on that, or maybe we are kind of limited in what kind of parameters we can use to actually test that. So I would say that still a lot can be done.
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. I'm excited to see what you find and what you do. I'm sure the producers and our listeners are too. So we'll make sure to have you back on the show once you get rolling. Before we get to our final three questions, I'll just ask if there's a take-home message that you want our listeners to get from today's episode. What would that be?
I think I would say that it's just I think welfare studies are like we can really touch on all the different angles and different subjects. So I think what I would say that I find it important, at least as my first step here, is really to understand what would be of value for the producers, like in terms of welfare studies, and I would be interested to explore that with them, and then also to bring in my knowledge from before, all my experiences, and then hopefully we can, kind of work together and then, improve the pigs' welfare in Canada in the future.
Yeah. I'll just add that this is the perfect opportunity for anybody that wants to influence swine ethology research. You got a fresh researcher that's coming on, so your contact information will be included with the episode. So I might be overstepping, but I think you're more than willing to hear from anybody that wants to have a conversation with you about this. So.
Sure. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
It's time for our famous three. Customers are always looking for greater efficiency. Hi-Phos from DSM Firmenich is the result of our commitment to develop a phytase enzyme which could deliver ever greater benefits. Hi-Phos increases the amount of plant phosphorus available to the animal, and less inorganic phosphorus needs to be added to the diet, resulting in substantial savings on feed costs. Hi-Phos improves average daily gain and feed efficiency. It also reduces both environmental impact and feed costs, meaning Hi-Phos has a big impact on the sustainability of animal production. Learn more at dsm.com/Hi-Phos, HIPHOS.
Okay, so before I let you go, we have our 3 questions that we ask everybody. I know you were worried about the one, but hopefully you came up with an answer. So the first question is, what is your favorite swine or agriculture-related resource?
Okay, so yes, I have to think really hard last night. So I think this one is easier because I do read Pig Progress a lot before. So I think the good thing about Pig Progress is that it's really international. So I like the global perspective because I've been working with in many different countries and also my own country in Taiwan. So I kind of like to know about everything that's happening globally. And then they also have, like writers from, nutrition, welfare, physiology, genetics, every field. So I really like that. But I mean, it's a little bit a pity that now they are into the subscription mode. So I'm still thinking about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, but that's a good source, I would say. Yes.
Yeah, good. So our next one is, thinking, and this could be anything, your favorite book or resource or anything. But so free reign, just something that you would recommend.
Yeah, because I was telling you, I don't read outside of my work now. Yeah, but actually, I think I really like this book. I mean, it's not like completely non-pig related, but then it's a book called Some We Love, Some We Hate, Some We Eat. So it's a book by Hal Herzog. I mean, yeah, I think he's kind of a great researcher in human-animal relationship. I like this book is just because it really tells kind of the story of the complexity of our relationship with different types of animals, and then sometimes it relates also to how we treat them, and then it differs between culture background, between
Mm-hmm.
histories also. But I find it fascinating. But then also as a behavior welfare scientist, you always have to think about what's your relationship with the animals you study, and then why is that, and then so I really like that book. I think that a new edition recently came out, so I'm happy to actually kind of read it again as an audiobook.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that one up because it sounds like it would be particularly interesting for people to read, given that increasing distance of the population from the animals, especially the ones that we eat.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully some people will look that one up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, our last question is, when you look back, and you've been to a number of places, so we'll see what you come up with. But when you think back to particularly successful pork producers, or even if you look back at like mentors or leaders that you've worked with, what is a characteristic that you think makes the successful ones particularly successful?
Yeah, I think it would have to be kind of being able to listen to different opinions and then being open-minded about this. I think it's I mean, like all the people I have interacted with, like producers included, I think because like the world is changing very fast every day now. Is like the pig production 20 years ago and now is very different. And then really, in order to kind of adapt to the new, new demands, new requirements, or in Europe, for example, they have new legislations coming out. I think it's really important to be kind of open-minded and then to be able to accept that you need to adapt to these changes. Otherwise, it's difficult to survive. So, I mean, I have worked with some of the producers and also the people in the food industry. I think it's really important that you have this new thing coming at you every day, but then as long as you are kind of open to new suggestion and then changes that can still make your business viable, it's always the ones that kind of adapt the best. So I would say that would be kind of my take on that.
Yeah, that one comes up a lot. I've done enough of these now that the same things keep popping up when we ask that question, but it's always good to know what people think. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. So thank you again for coming on and joining us. And I will say I'm looking forward once again, to hearing about the work that you do and the stuff that you find.
Great. Thanks, Dan, for the invitation. Thanks, everyone.